Hello.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you.
Good. Good. Yeah, I've been busy, but good. Glad to
Yes,
see you
yes.
too. Yeah.
All right. Folks, we are back. See,
Yeah.
we promised last time
Hello.
with our third episode that we will be more
Exactly.
regular. So here we are with our fourth episode, right?
Yes, fourth. Wow.
Yes, yes. This is the Picture Book Matters podcast, and you're listening to our fourth episode. And Picture Book Matters is a platform where we conduct workshops and masterclasses for emerging and aspiring picture book creators. And this platform is created by Eva Wong Nava and me, Debasmita Dasgupta. Eva is an award winning author, art historian, editor, and she wears many other hats. And I am a picture book illustrator, I'm a graphic novelist, and I'm a film producer. So here we are with our fourth episode. And Eva, like always, what is today's topic?
Oh, I think today we might talk about like our latest projects. How's that? Shall we talk about that? Yeah. I think both
Interest.
of us have got new projects or forthcoming books, or maybe it's yours probably been released already. Right.
Yes,
Shall we talk
yes.
about that? Yeah, I would like to hear about your book, and I'm think you might be curious to hear about mine.
Sure, sure. Let's take this opportunity to talk about one of our books. And the idea is, of course, we're going to be sharing about our book in general, but the idea is also to talk about the process behind the making of
Oh
that
yeah,
book,
definitely.
right? Like always, that's the ethos of Picture Book Matters. So we share the anecdotes behind every story that we create.
Mm-hmm.
So why
Absolutely.
don't you start, Eva? What's your book? What's
Oh,
the title
okay.
of your book?
Yeah. So I have a book coming out, and that book has taken a while to a while to um be published, I guess. It's not published yet, but I do have an advance author copy or an advanced reading copy or ARC,
Mhm.
which we can talk about later what ARC is. So here it is. It's
What's
called
the name?
Dancing Dumplings for My One and Only. As you know, I love to write about food. So, and here's another food book. Yeah,
Mhm.
and I just love the gold foil. Look at that.
Looks lovely.
Yeah, and it's illustrated by Natal Quack. Natal
Mhm.
Quack is
Yes,
Malaysian, New Zealand, British illustrator. Like a lot of us living in the diaspora, we're hyphenated people, let's just
I
say.
know. Hmm.
So yeah, so that's my next book. It comes out in America first, in the USA with Candlewick Press. It's coming out in
Mhm.
December, and with Walker Books in January 2025. So I'm
Okay.
really excited about it. Yeah.
Around the corner. Congratulations.
Thank you. Not long. Yeah, yeah, not
Yes,
long.
fantastic, fantastic. And I know Natal,
Oh,
Natal
wow.
and I, we are represented by Alice Williams, who is our literary agent. So,
No way.
yeah, and interestingly, Alice, every summer she organizes, a get together for
Yeah.
all the artists and writers that she represents. And Natal and I, we were supposed to meet last time, the last
Oh,
summer. Unfortunately, she didn't make it to the event. But I was hoping
oh,
to
that's
see
a
her. I
shame.
mean, we had a conversation that we would be seeing each other for the first time face to face, but
Right.
unfortunately, she couldn't make it. So, yeah, maybe next
Oh,
time.
well, next time, maybe next
Yes,
summer. Yeah, I
absolutely.
mean, Natal and I are friends now, right?
Hmm.
We didn't really know each other before. And that actually is quite rare because usually illustrators and or authors kind of are not really friends. They may know of each other, but they don't socialize, for example. It's not to say that they cannot and do not, right? Some do, some don't, but mostly it's a very separate kind of world, isn't
Yeah.
it? Um, so yeah, but Natal and I are now friends because we are part of the same well, we're part of a community, I guess, in the UK. It's called the East and Southeast Asian community, but we're part of this other network called Bubble Tea Writers Network. And that's
Hmm.
actually a bunch of us who came together. It was started by children's book author Maisie Chan, and she got us all together, and so it's become a network, right? So yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah. Oh, I'm so
Wonderful.
glad you know her too. So you'll meet her probably next year for sure. Yeah.
Yes, let's see. Let's hope for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought I should share something which is already out in the world so that, after listening to this podcast, if people want to grab a copy, they can buy it. They can buy it from bookstores, they can buy it from Amazon. It's available on Amazon UK, Amazon US, Amazon India. It's actually a HarperCollins book. And HarperCollins has published it.
Oh wow.
This is my first HarperCollins India book because I have been published by HarperCollins in the UK before. But this is my first HarperCollins India book. It's a graphic novel called Zardozi Stitched with Love. And it's written and illustrated by me. And I love the work, the Zardozi work that you can
Yeah.
see. It's shining. It's just like the Zari work. So yeah, when I got the book, I was like, oh my God, yes, you did great, HarperCollins. So yes, so this is the book that
Beautiful.
I had written and illustrated. It's a very interesting book. I'll tell you the journey of this book when we get into this. But just for everybody's understanding, Zardozi, the word, Zardozi, it's actually thread work. It's a very specialized kind of thread work, which is done with golden threads,
Mm.
golden and silver threads usually. And if you have seen Indian Mughal um, dresses and costumes, you will see a lot of those zari work in it. We also call it zari work. So Zardozi, it's actually called zari work or that golden thread work, embroidery. It's very
Oh.
difficult to do, and there is
Mhm.
a lot of, there are lots of things behind the making of a Zardozi. But the story is about that and about also a lot of other things. So we'll get into that. But at the moment, this is a book I will be talking about today.
Yeah, I want to hear more. I want to know what inspired you to write that book. Because I know you like fabrics. I know you like textures. Because
I love fabric. Yes.
yeah, because your illustrations just full of textures.
Yes, absolutely. You know me very well, so
Mhm,
you know this detail about me. I just love fabrics. I love the different, the motifs, the patterns, the
mhm,
designs. I just love them. So yeah, this was definitely that was one of the inspirations, but there were also other inspirations behind the making of this book. And for a change, if I may start with my inspiration first.
oh,
Um, so this book, it's edited by Rajat Mittal, and Rajat is he's a packager, and he's based in the U.S. In San Francisco. And this book took me a while because the process started a couple of years ago. I think it was just before COVID, if I'm not wrong,
oh,
when
wow.
Rajat first approached me, and he said because Rajat runs this. Initiative, which is called Boyish. And Rajat has also packaged a different book before. I think it's called She Can, You Can.
Mhm.
It's a bestseller in India. It's also published by HarperCollins. And he did that first book and then came up with this whole initiative called Boyish. And it's a beautiful concept when Rajat approached me because it talks about um, breaking stereotypes about masculinity,
Oh,
and yes, because we talk a lot about in this patriarchal society, we talk a lot about women's empowerment and feminism, but we don't really talk about how men also fall prey under this hierarchy of patriarchy.
mhm.
So it actually, I mean, his initiative is all about that, raising feminist boys and also helping people understand the nuances of these gender stereotypes, right? And also breaking those myths around it. So
Mm-mm.
when he approached me, he said that I'm trying to package a book like a collective, and I want you to create a graphic novel. So I give you full freedom to write whatever you want to write, whatever you want to create, and I will then take it to the world, and I'll make it. I'll take
Yeah.
care of the rest of the things. And it was like Wow, you know,
So
I
it's not
love
an I
people.
so it's not an that's wonderful. So it's not an IP work. It's not an intellectual property work. It's not an IP work, right? So he just came up with a concept. Let me
No,
get
no,
this
he
right.
didn't. He didn't come up with a concept.
Okay. You
So,
so the
boy,
character was chosen by you.
no, the entire book is written by me. It's my IP. So how it
Okay.
works is, uh, he is a packager and he runs an initiative. So he came to me with this idea, which is about boyish, that this is what he has been doing. And he
Mhm.
wants to create a lot of things, not just this book, but also several other books or, other forms of creative expressions. But he said, I want you, because I know I want to work with somebody who can write, who can draw, who can design, so that they can create something that I can take it to the world. And we could celebrate this whole idea of boyish, being boyish, or what is being boyish, or what is not being boyish. So then I came up with the entire storyline. First of all, I came up with the idea that it will be a graphic novel. I came up with the storyline. I came up with the entire book. I wrote the book. I illustrated the book. I designed the book. And he was an integral part of the creative process because he edited the story with me. And then it went to him, and that's when he started pitching it to different publishers, including HarperCollins, who took it, and that's how
Got
it's
it.
out there.
Right. So for the purpose of our listener who wants to know what a book packager is, that's exactly what a book packager does. They approach authors, or illustrators, they have a project they want to do, and they get but because you do both write and illustrate, so it's a graphic novel. So what sometimes happens, right, if I'm not wrong, is that they get an illustrator and an author together to work on this project if the author only writes and the illustrator only illustrates,
Yeah.
right? So I think as an illustrator, you could do as an one could do both, and that's always great, isn't it?
Yes.
I just write, as I said.
Hmm.
I don't deal with illustrations because
Yeah.
I don't draw. I couldn't draw to save my life anyway, so it's better that I don't do that. And so I work with illustrators. So it's a different process for me.
Yes.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think there's also a subtle difference between a packager and an agent,
correct,
right?
correct. Yeah.
And you want to say that? What is the difference between a packager and an agent?
So a packager is someone like you, like would say, who comes up with this. Sometimes they come up with an idea. They say, okay, I want you to write a series of books about, say, I don't know, Asian heroes, for
Hmm.
example,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And they could come up with a concept
Yeah.
themselves. They will say, okay, and so sometimes what happens is that in the industry we say, oh, this is IP work. So
Hmm.
basically, the writer writes to a brief
Yeah.
that the packager has given them,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And the packager works with different editors. They work with different publishing houses because they are the ones with the contacts to these places,
Right.
right?
Right.
Usually, sometimes an author may have an agent already,
Hmm.
and then they'll work through the agent to negotiate the contract. So
Yes.
an agent and a packager are two different entities in
Yes.
public. An agent represents the author or illustrator.
Hmm.
They will take a cut of a commission
Hmm.
whenever that the manuscript is sold or acquired, right? So that's what an agent does. So an
Yeah.
agent is like, I would say, I guess it's your lead, it's the middleman, it's the middle person between the publisher and the author, right? That's where
Right.
the agent sits. And they
Right.
do all the negotiations for the author, right?
Right.
So I guess a good agent is worth their weight in gold, I always say, right? Because
Right.
you want them to, you're not, I guess the relationship is a really, um, it's an interesting one. They're not your friend. They're more like your business partner, but they're also not really your business partner, you know? So it's
Yeah.
really hard to say what it is. But if you want to work in the UK and the US, you'll need to have an agent to obviously, if you want to work in trade publishing like us, you'll need an agent.
Right, right. And just to add on to that whole process, especially in my case in Zardozi, the main difference between this packager and my agent is that if I go through an agent, the agent does not have to pay me anything because their job is to take my story to the publishers and see if any of the publishers are taking it.
Mhm.
But when I was going through the packager actually gave me the advance to actually work on the book.
Mm,
So they were already paying me the money to work on the book. And then finally, when the contract happened with the publisher, then again, I was getting the other set of money. So
mm.
that's how the packager is also giving you the money. They are also kind of your employer before the publisher comes on board.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And
yeah.
I would say that I guess this is kind of what, in a nutshell, a packager does, right?
Mm.
It's a very interesting setup.
Yes.
And for I think for kind of aspiring or emerging authors,
Mm.
um, it's a good way to start, I think, to get your work out there.
Yes.
Sometimes, a lot of times, for book packages, the author also writes under a pseudonym.
Mm.
Um, it may not be because they may um maybe that's something we could talk about, right, in one podcast, because it's quite complicated. Maybe we can
Yes.
save that for another podcast. What do you think? Yeah.
Yes,
It's
absolutely.
a little bit complicated, and I think that I mean, I get asked a lot of questions about this as well. So I think we could
We
dedicate.
could do that.
Yeah,
We could definitely do that.
yeah,
No, I
yeah,
mean, in terms of processes, one needs to understand because this is very important. Where in Picture Book Matters, we always talk about publishing as a way to have a professional
yeah,
life,
yeah,
okay, to pay your bills. We don't really work with hobby writers or artists.
yeah,
Of course, I mean, that could be your starting point, your hobby, your passion, but we actually help you to make your passion into your profession because that's how we live our lives, and we want to just share those experiences with others so that the other person could also have a similar kind of lifestyle if they like. So that's why I'm just reiterating this point that I did not produce this book with this assumption that one day somebody will take it and my agent will go and pitch it, and I'll depend on my agent for doing that. It's more like it was commissioned already from the very beginning when there was no story, there was no idea. It came with a contract to me, with money to me, that okay, we are giving you this money and we're giving you the freedom to think about a story. And it was kind of a very, I would say, for an author, for a creator, that's one of the best positions to be in, because when somebody actually comes to you and gives you the freedom to express yourself with money. So
mm, mm.
that's the beauty of working with a packager, because they give you that check well in advance. That's what then translates into the writing, the creation of your work, that later on the packager will take it to publishers, and then the rest of the process will follow.
Absolutely. I think that this really calls for a separate conversation, because then we can talk about, what a book packager is properly, what an agent is, and what working with publishers or editorial publishing houses. And also we can talk a little bit about self-publishers who,
Yes.
because they're all very different, they're all publishing, I guess, but very different
Right.
moving parts in publishing.
Right.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about your book a little bit more, Eva? Like, what
Yeah.
is the inspiration, the story?
I'm really excited about Dancing Dumplings, actually. So inspiration was, it's funny because this book it's meant to be my debut book, right? So it was the book that I had submitted to, I had submitted to agents, right?
So
So
hang
I
on.
queried agents with
Your debut book in the sense,
my
debut.
debut book in the
Okay.
UK. My
Okay.
debut book in the
Okay.
UK. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry. I thank you for clarifying. Yes, my debut book in the UK is because I
Mm.
also published in Singapore. So actually I've had a few debuts, but never mind. It's my debut book in the UK, so I shall be specific about that. But it's no longer my debut book anymore. Um, So what that means, right, for the for our listeners is that a debut is the first book that you publish as an author or as a creator. And this was the book that I had also queried, which means I sent it out to several agents
Hmm.
and looking for representation.
Hmm.
And I very quickly heard back. Actually, I heard back in 2 days from my current agent, and I think she shall always be my agent. Fingers crossed, because sometimes the relationship might change, but for now, I'm just super happy that she is my agent. So she came back to me in 2 days, which is actually really, really rare in this industry. So I feel really quite very, very blessed and really, really privileged, but blessed and grateful in that way, because she came back immediately, literally in 2 days, and said, I love your story. I would like to have a conversation with you. So in the industry, this is called a golden conversation. You quickly say, yes, yes, I am free, like immediately, right?
Yes.
And so we had that conversation, and I asked her a few questions, and she asked me a few questions. Usually the question an agent asks would be like, do you have any more stories?
Hmm.
Is this just the one, or do you have any more in your drawer, right? And you should always have more than one story, even if
Hmm.
you're only submitting one, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So she basically, then I said, yes, I have more stories, and all that. And then we signed the contract. Like that was within a week, I would say.
So, what was the inspiration behind this story?
The inspiration behind the story was actually from my daughter,
Hmm.
who loves dancing, who loves eating dumplings. And
Oh.
she said, Mommy, one day you should write a story about dancing dumplings, right? I thought it was really funny because she was a lot younger then, and that was how it came about. So that was the inspiration. But then the story evolved, as all stories do, right?
Yes. Yes.
And it started out very differently from the
Hmm.
way it ended. So the book that you're going to be reading is ready for pre-ordering. And we can talk a little bit about why pre-ordering is very important for authors. Um, it's ready for pre-ordering, as I said. And when you read it, the story that you're going to be reading is very different from the story that it started out as. And that
Yes.
happens
So,
quite a lot.
is it a mother-daughter story?
It is a granddaughter, mother, and grandchild story. So
Okay.
there's a
Three generations.
three generations. So it's an intergenerational story.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And the story is set in the UK?
the story is set in not specifically in the UK, but it's
Okay.
set in a country with seasons. So
Okay.
when you open the book, or actually even when you don't even have to open the book, you can actually already see
Hmm.
that the colors are quite autumnal. They're they're
Yeah.
they're they're
Yeah.
warm colors. So you when you open the book, you will see that it's actually it starts during autumn.
Oh, okay.
These are end pages,
Yes. Yeah.
beautiful, and you can see that the leaves are falling,
Okay.
on
Yeah.
the title
Yeah.
page. So it's set in this generic country where there are seasons.
Okay. Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah.
Now, this is because this is very important, right? That one needs to understand the setting of the story, the theme, like you said, where it started and where it reached. It has a journey within a journey.
Yeah, definitely. 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 So going back to the debut thing, so it's no longer my debut book because it took a while. The journey was quite a long journey. It was a journey worth taking and worth taking slowly,
Hmm.
right? I think I mean, working with Natal has also made me realize that, working with an illustrator that understands your story is so crucial. and
Yes.
trade publishers, the big five publishers usually tend to match the picture book author with an illustrator who can, who can bring out those the text, right,
Right.
through the
Right.
visuals. Yeah.
Fantastic. So let me go back to Zardozi.
Please.
So yeah, so my story is actually set in India, and it's set in a metropolis in India. So the idea was that we will create a story about a kid who goes to perhaps in an international school in India, because the language has to be more international so that the book could go to anywhere in the world and people
Hmm.
would be able to relate to the language that we are using. So the good thing was, when I was writing this story, I'm originally from India, but I was writing it between living in Singapore and in the UK. And Rajat is also an Indian, but he lives in the US. So that was really helpful. We could actually, work on the language that way, because he could tell me about the language that is being used amongst this age group, like 9 to 10 years or 9 to 11 in the US. And I
Hmm.
was able to tell him about the language that we're using in the UK or in Singapore, let's say in international schools. So the story is that way. It has an international appeal, but like always, I think my stories are also very rooted. So they
Yes.
have a specific place. It's also a very local story. It talks about appreciating your Indian culture, your Indian roots, your South Asian roots, and celebrating it with
Yes.
with your identity, with your family, with your friends. So the story is about Z. This is the main character of my book, and that's why the names are those Z. So it's not actually written with two big Z's, but I have made it written that way because the story is about Z making a Zardozi, and in the story, Z has two best friends. One is Churni and one
Mm-hmm.
is Kabir. And then he has a pet dog. And interestingly, he has a very special name. It's called Bhanu Pratap. Bhanu is a very, it's a very royal name in India. And but his dog's name is Bhanu. And the most interesting character is this grandmother's character.
Oh, I love that.
She's
Yeah.
called, yeah, and she's called Rani, and Rani is my own grandmother's name.
Mm-hmm. I,
Yes,
I,
and
I already see quite similar themes, in our books.
yes,
Grandmother, child, yeah,
exactly,
and
exactly.
dog, yeah.
Yes. So, so Bhanu is a secret dog. Okay, he's a secret pet dog. He doesn't live with them. So there is a whole story about Bhanu inside this book. And then there is also the grandmother who, again, she doesn't live with the family. She comes and visits. And there's a very interesting way of how the grandmother speaks, because she doesn't like city life. She has
Mm,
chosen to live in the villages. And this is her life. And that's how, in fact, there is a whole section where, these two friends, they ask him, like, why does your grandmother don't live with you guys? And he tells them that, well, I mean, that's her life, that's her choice. She decided not to live here in the city. She wants to live in the villages and work with villagers. So
mm-mm.
this whole I would say, my stories, and those who have read Terminal 3, or even Nadia, my first graphic novel, they know that first of all, I deal with difficult subjects in
Mm-hmm.
my books. That is something I feel like it's important to talk about difficult topics
Yeah,
in children's literature.
I
And
agree.
the other thing is talking about um, when I'm talking about difficult subjects, it has to be also packaged in a certain way so that it's understandable. It even a child could understand it. It has to be
Accessible, yeah.
presentable in that way. So that is something I'm very particular about. And the most important thing in my stories, and this is very recently, I was being interviewed by one of the newspapers, and I said this, that my stories are very political because I believe in art with politics, and
Mm-mm.
no art is created in a
A
vacuum.
vacuum.
My stories are very, very political stories, even if they are children's stories or YA stories. They're very political, but politics is not said or visible in your face, but when you read between the lines, when you try to understand the images or the dialogues, then you will realize that there is politics that I'm talking about. And it's very important for children to understand that through those stories, because it's not about the right answers, it's about asking questions through the
Yeah,
stories, right?
correct.
So that
Absolutely.
is something I always try to do, and this story is no different. It talks about identity, it talks about masculinity, it talks about feminism, it talks about um, division, the
Oh,
rural and urban life, the disconnect.
yes.
And the most important thing, Zardozi in itself, this is a craft form which is mostly done in rural India
Mm-mm,
and by underprivileged population. And
mm-mm.
you will mostly, Zardozi, you will see celebrated in big fashion industries.
Yes.
In Paris Fashion Week, there will be big designers showcasing Zardozi work, but all
Yeah.
those Zardozi thread work is actually done in rural India.
Yeah.
So when I'm showing a boy, a middle class young boy, from India, from a metropolitan India, who perhaps go to an international school, doing Zardozi in his house, there is a commentary over there. So I hope children would be able to, understand those details and start asking questions about these things through them.
Fantastic, fantastic. History lesson, geography lesson, lots of sociology lesson, all in one graphic novel. It's very complex and very layered. But I think that's what picture books are. They're very layered books, even though the readership, I mean, we are writing for an audience who could be as young as 3 years old,
True.
right? I mean, our stories are very layered, and I mean, as a picture book writer, I mean, there are quite similar things that Dancing Dumplings explores. Um, so it explores the intergenerational relationship between three generations: the grandmother, the mother, and the daughter. Right?
Mm.
Something happens in the story because in a story, something has to happen, right? If nothing
Yes.
happens, it's quite, it's just not a story anymore.
Yeah.
Something happens, and then emotions are, expressed. And sometimes that something happens is quite a difficult and challenging thing that a child has to face, right? So I think as writers of children, we really need to be able to help children access these emotions, negative emotions, or um, as they're known, like sadness,
Mm.
well, anger, and all this. We need to help them express it in a way that is, I mean, well, we write it in a way that is accessible for the children, isn't it?
Mm.
Right. So
100%.
yeah. Um, so I guess we are me and you found each other, I guess, also through the projects that we've done together, right?
Yes.
And we have a lot through the years. I mean, I've known you now many years, and every time we have a conversation, I realize that we are actually very similar. We always come from the same page, in a
Me too.
sense, right?
Me
And
too.
and um and we don't shy away from actually talking about difficult subjects, even though sometimes our publisher may want us to shy away from that, but there is a
You
way
have to
that
know how to present it.
correct. Exactly. We need to know how to present it. And also, every book I write is got to be different from the next book I write. Because
Yes.
with each book I learn, right?
Yes.
So yeah,
Absolutely. It's a learning process. Every book is a learning process.
absolutely.
And I think with that, we again covered a lot of ground today
Hmm.
through our books. Maybe you could also
Wow.
show your book a little bit.
Yes,
Yes. So,
of course. Can
dumplings.
you see? Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Zardozi. So, yeah, our listeners, our viewers can go and check it out. All these information are available online. They can pre-order your book. They can buy my book.
Hmm.
And yeah, so until the next episode, which is going to be our fifth episode, we say
Yes.
goodbye.
Goodbye.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.